I would like to take just a little while and talk to you about recycling. This isn't really a big deal in the book, but it's an area that I think is very important and something that I've had a lot of experience with. So first of all, when we think of recycling, as we've talked about, this is about man or humanity taking something that is depletable and finding a way to recycle it so that we don't lose it, we can be in a sustainable situation. So ideally, we're talking about things that are depletable, like plastic, which is derived from oil, petroleum, and aluminum, which there's a limited amount of bauxite on the earth that we know of, copper and other metals. So one aspect of recycling is this idea of reusing depletable resources so that we don't deplete them as quickly. The second aspect of recycling is about keeping certain things out of the environment. So we could think of, for example, an iPhone has a lot of heavy metals in it. We really would not like those heavy metals to get into our food supply or get into our soil where it can cause damage. So two aspects, right? One aspect is reusing the depletable resources so we make them last longer, and the second is to keep the environment safe from those resources. Okay, so one of these that we recycle doesn't seem to fit that, and that's paper. So paper is not a depletable resource. It's a renewable resource because we can grow more trees. Paper is not a danger to the environment per se. So we're not concerned about the fact that paper gets into the ground and it's going to poison somebody. So why do we recycle paper? It's a good question, one that I'm not sure we have a good answer for. But nevertheless, we do it. If you think about paper bags versus plastic bags at a grocery store, the plastic bags, we can argue, those are bad for the environment. They can hurt animals, fish, and so forth. But paper bags, that's questionable. They could harm people. And they're certainly recyclable. In fact, we can encourage people to recycle those. Now, let's take a look at some of the other things that we recycle first. So one of those is batteries, car batteries. Now, we don't really do that with other aspects of the car, although tires, yes, we do some of that with tires as well. But the battery is a particularly big problem because we have to replace our batteries every 5 years or so, and the batteries are filled with lead and acid. And the lead is a problem because we know that lead is a poison to humans, so we want to keep heavy concentrations of lead out of our soil. We know there's going to be places where there is lead, but we don't want it to be spread across the environment. And so we have a battery buyback program that basically says if you want to buy a new battery, you have to bring in an old battery to get the new battery, or they're going to charge you a very high fee. So it makes a lot of sense to bring your old battery in. That then allows them to recycle the battery. Okay, another one is aluminum. We're really big on recycling aluminum, and aluminum is a good one because aluminum is very costly to produce in a good pure form as compared to other metals. It requires a lot more heat, requires a lot of other chemicals. I know about this because that was my father's business, was aluminum processing, and so I had a lot of personal experience with that. But aluminum is something that aluminum cans and other aluminum that we like to recycle. Currently, we are recycling about 36% of the aluminum goods that are produced. That's pretty high. It's one of our highest in terms of recycling. I think we could do better than that. And then we talk about plastics. So one of the concerns with plastics is that they get into the ground, they don't break down quickly. There's potentially chemicals in the plastics that aren't good for us, and so we want to stay away from plastics. The second is damage it can do to animals, plant, fish, and other things. So we try to recycle plastic, and we do a pretty good job with plastics. But let's get back to the idea of the paper bags, the plastic bags, and now what they're encouraging us to do, to bring cloth bags that are reusable with us when we grocery shop. Now, when we lived in California, this was one of the things that came up in a big way. So first it was San Jose, the city of San Jose launched this, And we lived in Los Gatos, just outside of San Jose. Los Gatos did not have that rule. So if we went to the grocery store in San Jose, when we went to check out, we could get a bag, a paper bag. They would cost us anywhere from 25 cents to 50 cents per bag. The question is, I don't know how many bags I need. You have to sort of guess. I think I need 4 bags, right? Oh no, I'm one short. Now what am I going to do? It was a real challenge to try to figure that out. In the past, we also paid for the paper bags. It wasn't like we weren't paying for them and now we were paying for them. What they did was they just lowered the price of the food slightly to then allow them to collect the money on the paper bags. Before, the price of the paper bags was included in the food, so we didn't have to worry about that because the right balance of food and paper bags was in place. The purpose of the fee is to discourage us from using paper bags and instead to bring cloth bags from home. Now, the cloth bags are an interesting situation because, of course, this was not the natural way for us to do this, to bring cloth bags. The obvious way was to use packaging provided by the producers, but we are forcing ourselves to do things in a different way. So what's the problems or the strengths and weaknesses of the cloth bags? So the cloth bags, we say, well, they're recyclable. Well, reusable, we should say. And not recyclable, reusable. So that means we have to clean them, we have to wash them. If we don't wash them, they pick up all kinds of bacteria, which can be deadly. And then that bacteria is transferred to our vegetables, to our fruit, to other things. And so we want to make sure that we wash our bags regularly. Well, washing bags requires the use of detergent. Detergent is not good for the environment. It also requires the use of hot water. Hot water, again, requires the use of petroleum and so forth to generate the heat, to warm the water. So there's always downsides to everything. Now, one of the other things that happened as a result of the cloth bags, and I got this from one of the managers at Safeway stores in California, is that theft has increased. So that an additional 1% of the cost of their goods was being stolen because people were able to hide it in their cloth bags that couldn't be seen. Before that, they weren't allowed to have bags, or the bags that they offer are see-through, so you'd be able to tell if there was something in them. But now, with the introduction of cloth bags, that they saw that shoplifting increased by an additional 1% of their margins was lost because of additional shoplifting. It's very simple for people to slip things into these cloth bags and then not pay for it. So that cost is then passed on to the rest of us, so we pay a higher price for our goods when we go to the grocery store as a result of it. So there's a lot of unforeseen situations that come up as a result of switching to something that isn't sort of the natural way of doing things. So that's something that requires us to think about. Okay, now let's turn our attention then to EWaste. Now, EWaste is something that I was involved in when I was at the Technology Association of America. I was in charge of the training programs, among other things, and that meant that I was required to bring C-level executives in and train them on the rules of EWaste locally, nationally, and globally. And the hard part there is that you have different rules. So the city of New York has a set of rules involving EWaste. The state of New York has another set of rules. The US has another set of rules. And each country in Europe has their own rules, plus they have the rules of the EU. And if you want to do business in England or Great Britain, you have another set of rules. So it's very complicated if you're going to produce an electronic device to know all the different rules at all the different levels and follow all these rules. It required some of our clients to have as many as 3 or 4 full-time people whose job was to keep track of all the rules and make sure that they were not violating any of them. Another problem was that in certain countries, they would not provide you time to adapt. So if they changed the rules, and at that instant when they changed the rules, if you weren't compliant, then you had to stop shipping product that day. You can't sell any more product. You have to recall everything you have and retool it. Well, this was extremely expensive. Mostly the Scandinavian countries were doing this. Other countries would allow them to continue to release their pipeline and give them some time to adapt to the new rules. Now, what are the options? How do you address these problems? So one of the things that people have come up with is the idea of having deposits. Think of it as like cans of soft drink, where you have to pay a certain amount as a deposit. When I was young, there was like a 10-cent deposit on pop bottles or soft drink bottles. And when you brought the soft drink bottles back, they gave you your 10 cents back. So that way you were recycling the soft drink bottles. Well, they don't really do that anymore. They have the deposit, but they don't give it back to you. So the idea of a refundable deposit. So Apple's doing this with the iPhone, where when you buy a new iPhone, later you can bring it back and trade it in. They'll give you, usually I think it's at least $100, and it may be more than that depending on the market value for the phone. So their idea is charge you extra up front, then give you some money back when you bring the phone back in, and trade it in on another model. Another thing that's been done is to try to accommodate the disposal of electronics. It's very difficult to find, where do I take it? How do I get rid of this? So a lot of people just hide it in their trash cans, which is not a good idea. So when it comes to regular trash, we have trash cans all over the place. We have them in our house, we have them at work, we have them even in neighborhoods and so forth, where there are trash cans, you can throw your trash. That isn't true about the electronic waste. So we need to think about how can we make it easier to dispose of electronics, much like we can with any other trash. Some simple mechanism for doing that. Another thing that's really big here is social norms, educating people on the dangers and trying to make it so there's more social pressure on people to dispose of their electronics properly and for the firms to produce them properly.